Hi, welcome to Funded. I'm Caitlin Finney, and this is a Clearinghouse CDFI podcast, here to give you a glimpse into the community development work Clearinghouse CDFI is doing around the country. Listeners can expect to tune into conversations discussing what a CDFI is, how getting funded by a CDFI works, community impact stories, and how we are all working towards building better communities together. Hello, and welcome back to Funded by Clearinghouse CDFI. I'm your host, Caitlin Finney. Today, you're joining us on Ep.6 of Funded. We are unveiling our impact with director Mai Ha. Mai, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Clearinghouse has always had the mentality that we can make profit while also doing good in our communities. And a part of how we measure that is through our impact department. And we're joined by Mai Ha, Director of Impact. Mai, can you give a personal or professional background to our audience?
Sure, I'd love to. I've been at Clearinghouse now for about 9 years. I took about a 1-year hiatus to have a couple of babies, but I came back to Clearinghouse. When I first started here, I was an impact analyst. When there was no impact department, it was just a department or a sub-department in another department, but it has always been really important. And so since coming here 9 years ago, we've really focused on the mission and the impact and growing that department. So now we are a team of 5, including myself. Prior to coming to Clearinghouse, I went to school at UCSD and got a Bachelor's of Arts in Economics, and then I went to Pepperdine School of Law and got my JD there, and got licensed in California. So my path isn't exactly directed in the finance industry or the CDFI industry, but I ended up here because I wanted to make a difference. And, Clearinghouse is so unique in that we're for-profit, we're actually mission-based, that it felt very natural for me to come here.
Well, we're happy to have you here at Clearinghouse and on the podcast. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about what you and your team are doing to track our impact through these loans that we're making. So let's get into it, shall we?
Sure.
All right. You mentioned briefly already in your introduction that the impact department was not an original department of Clearinghouse CDFI. It was one that had to be created. Can you explain to us why, especially a lender would have an impact department? It's not something that's typical for most lending companies. Can you explain the role of it in Clearinghouse?
Yeah, sure. So you won't always find an impact department at a CDFI, I think, because CDFI is generally on the smaller side. And so they don't always have the resources to have its own department. But it was particularly important for us being having a double bottom line, being for-profit mission-based, that we also balanced out the profit side with the mission side. So I think that's the reason why we focus more on having an impact department. We want to make sure that the loans that we're providing have an impact. We want to make sure that we're also compliant with our CDFI fund certification. And we want to make sure that our investors are happy and that they are investing in us because they want to see an impact as well. So they want to see what types of impacts we're making. And so the impact department also provides the data for them to ensure that we're making an impact.
Okay, so it sounds like the impact department is important for a few different reasons. It's important to investors, it sounds like, but it also is important in maintaining our status as a CDFI. Can you explain what impacts we are tracking currently?
Sure. So there's a lot. I was talking to Melissa Johnson, and she runs our nCino, right? Our CRM, and that's where we store our data, is in nCino. And in our own object is what we call is where we store all our data. There's over 150 fields, right? So over 150 data points per loan for impact itself. And that's including things like number of clients served, number of jobs created, number of affordable housing units created or retained, in addition to data from the census tract, right? So like, what's the employment rate in that area? What's the poverty rate? What's the median income? And that really gives context to the impacts that we're making with the project.
Okay.
Interesting. 150 is a lot. We kind of advertise a handful of those in things like our annual report and our impact report. But what are some of the less known or maybe less assumed data points that we're tracking? I know like people, but what's one of the more surprising statistics that we're looking at?
Yeah. So so what you see like on a marketing report or, an annual report are the impacts of the project. But the other data points that we have to track that no one really sees except in context is the underlying third-party data, right? So all that expenses data that we're talking about. So for example, we can tell you that we've created 100 jobs, but what's going to make it even more impactful is that these 100 jobs are created in an area where unemployment is more than double what the national unemployment rate is, right? So these are going to jobs. These are jobs that are being created going to places that really need jobs. And I think that's why the impact data is really important, is because there's a lot of other data that we're collecting, not just on the project, but the area itself that really makes that project impactful.
Mm-hmm. As a B Corp, our status there is measured in a few different areas, right? Can you list some of those for our audience?
Sure. So with our B Corp, we are measured in 5 different areas. So we have customer, community, governance, worker, and environment. And every single B Corp or every single company that wants to become a B Corp has to go through this vigorous assessment, right? Hundreds of questions in each of those categories. And so for us, was really natural for us to become a B Corp because we're mission-based. We're also for-profit, and that's what a B Corp is. You're a for-profit company, is you also have high standards of social and environmental performance. And so it was, I would say, easy. I mean, the assessment's not easy, but it was very natural for us to become a B Corp. So, for example, we scored 149.4 on our last assessment, and you have to score an 80 to become certified as a B Corp. And on their website, they say that an ordinary business, right, just any ordinary business, scores a 50.9, which means that we scored 69 points over what we need to be certified. And now we are like more than scoring 3 times better than any ordinary business. So I think that puts a lot of context into like how great we're doing.
That's amazing. And those categories that B Corp is judging us on, and the 150 metrics of impact that we're tracking, is there overlap there in things like community or workers? Is there any kind of similar?
So the overlap is all the data that we are tracking, and the impacts is going kind of towards our customer section, right? So they specifically have segmented customers out from community. And so the fact that we're tracking it, the fact that we're following up, the fact that it's baked into our mission in terms of like our policies, our procedures, the way that we run things, everything that we do is centered around our customers, which is our borrowers, really gave us a huge boost in our score. And the community section is also really important too, because outside of our loans, right, what are we doing for the community? We have volunteer events, right, that the B Corp committee puts on every quarter now for staff to be able to take time off work to go volunteer. That boosts our score. How much participation we get from the staff to be able to go and participate paid, right? So that also boosts our score, as well as our charitable contributions that we have to various nonprofits that also boosts our score.
Okay. Mai, you mentioned that one of the metrics we're tracking is the number of clients served. Since our inception in 1996, that number has reached 3.9 million. How has tracking that number been for you over the last 9 years?
So that's always been one of the fields that we've tracked since the beginning of time. And I can't say that for all other 150 data points, but it is really impactful for me because 3.9 million is a lot. And I don't think that we really realize how much that is, because especially on my end and in my team, we're just looking at numbers all the time. So sometimes I like to visualize what 3.9 million looks like. And so I did some research on how to describe this. And so if you think about a football stadium or a large concert, it's about 100,000 seats, right? So think about 39 of those football fields or football stadiums side by side. And that's how many people we have helped since inception.
That's pretty incredible. Is that let's say the projects that we're financing, they have people that they're serving too, right? Is that the number that's
Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly them. So if you want to talk about the borrowers we've helped, it's about 2,600 and counting. And so that's the borrowers, and then they have people that they serve. And so we call them the beneficiaries. And so the beneficiaries with the clients, the customers, however you want to call it, that's 3.9 million.
Okay, wow. That's an incredible statistic. Thank you for clarifying how that's measured. I want to move now and quickly explain how this data is being tracked. You mentioned that we use nCino to track those data points, but how are we collecting the information? And where in the process is impact stepping into the loan to measure impact?
So the great thing about our team is that we all really work together, right? So the business development officers, they're the ones that are the first facing the customer or the borrower. And so they're already talking to the borrower about the impact set we want to have and we want to make with these loans. So we are all aware, we're all in the same mindset, right? And so the borrower is aware that there will be a survey coming down the line when they're further into the loan process. And so once it goes into the underwriting stage, we have our underwriters, our processors, they give them the underwriting survey, which is basically a 3-page survey that asks them how many clients do they serve annually, how many clients are they going to be able to serve more after funding. If they're going to create any jobs, how many jobs are existing at the time of funding, how many jobs do you think they're going to create with the funding? If they're going to create affordable units, how many are existing, how many are they going to create? So we can really get a baseline of what the money is doing, right? What the loan is actually doing and creating. And that's not always creating something. Sometimes it's rehabilitating something, a housing unit. Sometimes it's to refinance the loan, right? And so there are other aspects to it. But that's primarily where we get the data is through the survey. And then after it goes through funding, we're putting in all that data into our system to be tracked and analyzed and to be cleaned up and then layered on with a third-party data. And that's what we use to out to marketing. In some of our other lines of business, so our new markets and our Fulcrum line of business, we go further where every year during the investment period, we're also going back to the borrower and asking them, okay, you said this when we asked where we're at funding, and now can you follow up and let us know how are you doing on those goals, right? So we have some of the community benefits agreement on both the new markets and Fulcrum, and it's a contract basically saying that these are the goals that they're going to hit. These are as many jobs they're going to create during the investment period, or these are as many people they're going to serve and how they're going to serve them. And so it's an agreement between us and the borrower that these are their impact goals. And so part of our job is to follow back up with them every year to make sure that we're still aligned, that these are still the goals and that we're hitting these marks.
Is that something that follow-up, is that something that you do for every borrower or just those 2 lines of product that you mentioned?
So they're for the 2 lines of business, mostly because those are built into financing, right? So it's standard practice in the new markets industry to always have a CBA. With Fulcrum, since it's private equity, that's actually unusual in the private equity world, but our Fulcrum isn't like typical private equity, right? It's to decrease the generational wealth gap. So there's a mission side to it as well as, an equity side to it. And so we're able to capture all the impacts that happen after funding. Core is a little bit different because we don't have that built in, but we do try to go back and get additional data when we can. It isn't always easy, and that's part of the part where, the tracking of the impacts gets challenging sometimes, is being able to follow back up, having the resources and the time to follow back up with folks. But we do try to do that. And then when we can, and when, there's no issues with COVID, we would go do site visits as well. on some of the core projects to see how it's all doing.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you where the potential impact of a project, is that factored in mainly during the beginning conversations that the business development officer is having with the potential borrower?
So I think it's throughout the entire process, honestly. So I think that the BDOs know that they need to make the capital stack work, right? Which is, to manage the risk, the credit risk, but also to know that this loan is also going to have an impact. So if this project can go to a traditional bank, they're going to go to a bank. If there's not going to have any impact, then we don't necessarily want to be involved in it. They can go somewhere else to get financing if they need it. So the impact data itself gets collected with us, but I feel like the impact itself happens throughout the entire line, all from the BDOs down to us and accounting and marketing and everybody.
It's another way we are keeping that focus on purpose at the forefront of what we're doing here. So that's exciting to hear. Okay, Mai, moving on a little bit. Is there a loan that we funded in the last year or so that makes you go, wow, like it's been a great display of impact and how Clearinghouse is working in our communities?
Yeah, so we actually had a fairly recent loan called the Let It Roll Bull. And it was quite impactful because it had been a CREC investment about 6 or 7 years ago. And the intent was it's a bowling alley, by the way. The intent is to purchase the property from the owner at the time to hold until the tenant who was operating the business, running the bowling alley, to be able to purchase it himself. So the backstory to that is that his father is a professional bowler. And I'm sure he's had so many great memories with his father, right? Being able to bowl with him, that it was his dream to be able to own a bowling alley, but didn't have the money, right? He knew how to operate one, he knew how to manage it well, but didn't have the funds. And so part of what we did was to purchase it, to basically hold it for him until he could get the money together in time. So 3 years was supposed to be helpful, and then COVID hit, and then things were happening, and he was not able to. So it took about 6 or 7 years to finally get to the place where he could purchase it. And one of the great things about us being a CDFI mission-based is that the purchase price that we had set for him, but he purchased it at, was actually the price that it would have been 6 or 7 years ago. So instead of increasing the price that maybe a traditional bank or traditional investor would have done, we didn't. We kept it at the rate that we would have purchased it at 6 or 7 years ago. So I think it just goes to show you an example of like how we operate here internally, the decisions that we make, as well as, we had people go out to visit him to help him through his, understand the finances, get it in order. So Yvonne Blair went out there and helped him through that. I know that Lisa also worked through to get him a 50% guarantee with the SSBIC. So there were a lot of folks involved in it, and I didn't realize it until we got the notification on email through Encino saying this just funded, right? And then you could hear all the chimes like ding, 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 and everyone was just responding like, congratulations, we brought it to the finish line. It was really great. And I was like, what is this loan? I have to learn more about it. Everyone was involved. Everyone was really excited to see it go through. And so that, I think, is just a really great example of the mission that we have, and then the staff level of commitment to the mission and how we all work together to make that happen.
That is a beautifully executed story, like top to bottom, like the familial ties to the project, but also the fact that us as a lender were able to help him out and figure out a situation that would work for him, and getting across the finish line is really incredible. So thank you for sharing that with us. I wanted to ask you, do the borrower impacts have an effect on maybe the types of loans that we go and look for in the future? I want to get a better understanding of how we're using these impact statistics in the future. Like, how are we applying them?
Yeah. So one of the big ways that we use the data, besides for investors and for certification is to also apply for grants. So CDFI Fund, as well as other private organizations, have ability to obtain grants. And so what we do is all the data that we track, all the impacts that we're making, helps us to write a compelling grant application to be able to say, hey, we want to apply for this grant. This is how we're going to use it, and this is the impacts that we're going to make. And so us being able to track that data really helps to bolster our application and show to these grant organizations, CDFI funds, OFN, Twitter, like these big companies that are wanting to invest in low-income communities, to understand that you can trust us with this money because we're going to make a great impact with it. And having all that data really shows it, because we could talk all day long about the impacts that we're making, but to be able to quantify it is really important into making it compelling in a grant application.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. What are some of the examples of grants that we could apply for, and how would they be used?
Yeah, so the significant source of our grants comes from the CDFI Fund, so Financial Assistance Award. That is a more general grant application where you can do it to increase your loan volume. You can use it to create a new product. You can do it to lend in a new geography. So we've actually done all of those strategies, after through several years. And one good example of how we use the data was we knew that we weren't able to serve certain borrowers because they needed a higher loan to value. And so we created a new product in the affordable housing space where we would lend specifically to smaller developers who needed a higher loan to value. And I think that we were able to support our application and the need by being able to say, these are the set of borrowers that we're not able to currently serve under our current sources of funds. And so what I want to do in the future is to be able to capture that more rigorously. So anyone that we're not able to serve, to say why, so that we can capture what set of borrowers can we not serve, and then maybe hopefully develop a new product in the future that can serve that community.
Okay. Man, we're innovating over here in impact. Becoming a green company, or being viewed as an environmentally conscious company, is something that's been growing in importance in the last few years. What is Clearinghouse doing in that realm of tracking our impact? Is there something that we can be taking advantage of, or is there a new metric that we should be tracking? What can you share in that front?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, because there is a really exciting opportunity for us to become more involved. The EPA has come out with a new grant program that will provide funds to help lower the green gas emissions, right? So there's 3 different pots here, and we have an opportunity to participate. So OFN, as well as some other partner organizations in the CDFI industry, are leading the application to for the funding. And if they're able to get it, then we'll be able to get the benefits of that when we apply. So what we're doing today is that we're tracking on a higher level which of our projects have what we call green efforts, right? So that could be like water efficient fixtures, energy efficient lighting, water efficient landscaping, LEED certification, solar stuff. So they're higher level types of impacts, but it's still really important to be able to contribute to environmental causes, because it's called decarbonization of buildings, right? So when you can put in energy or water efficient fixtures, you're lowering the amount of greenhouse gas. We sometimes do things like biomass or wastewater treatment plants, but those are usually few for us. But those are also other ways that you can help with the environmental cause. What's exciting about this ability to get this grant funding is that we'll be able to fund more projects like that. And so we, in our track record, have a pretty good amount just by a natural course of our lending that we finance projects that have these things, because like you said, it's been more important more and more in the past several years. So the market is changing. The market is already adjusting to it and already accepting it. And so what's exciting is that we'll be able to finance these types of projects, more of these projects in the future when this funding comes out.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the previous projects that we've funded that have great effort? Do you have an example? I don't want to put you on the spot, but
yeah. So one of my favorite examples is La Crest. And so it's a like an office retail space in Los Angeles. And what's really great about it is that it's like a green campus where every single tenant in there has some kind of like green technology or some kind of green business. And so it's like this hub of like environmentally, companies that are working together to help the environment. But what's really awesome about it is that it's also LEED certified, but the space itself, if you do like a virtual tour, it's just amazing to look at, which one day I would love for the entire team to be able to see in person. But that's one of them. And then we have 2 wastewater treatment plants, one in the Navajo Indian Reservation and the other one in Pueblo Laguna. And that's really important so that they can have clean water. So when you don't have the right infrastructure for the water, you're actually creating a lot of waste that could negatively affect the environment. So being able to rehabilitate them or to get them up to code is really important so they can have clean water, but then also not harm the environment. And so that's another projects that we've had.
Let me ask you this briefly. Can you explain a little bit about what the people in your department do?
Yeah, sure. So we have 2 impact analysts, 1 data entry specialist, and 1 impact lead. And so our data entry specialist, she is the one getting all the data from the impact survey that we discussed and putting all the data into Encino. And then our analysts are the ones that are checking the data, but then also pulling the data to do analysis and aggregations of our impacts. And then that's, who works to give the information to the investors, the CDFI fund, to you guys in the marketing department. And then we also have our lead who works kind of a dual role in making sure the data is clean, as well as managing our systems with in Encino, right? Because there's so many fields that we have to think through and collect and clean, as well as layering with third-party data. And so he uses Tableau to be able to layer it in more quickly. So if we had to do everything manually, it would take so much time. But because he has Tableau skills, that he's able to take data from the U.S. Census, from HUD, from FFI EC map, and layer it in with what we already have to be able to tell a richer story. And so it quickens things up a lot more. It makes us more efficient in our job.
Thank you. It takes a full team of people to quantify all of our efforts and impact that we're making throughout the year. So thank you for explaining to us, me, my audience, about what Impact's doing around the year to help us. I want to reiterate again the importance that Clearinghouse puts on our purpose and our passion for people and profit combined. So thank you for listening to this episode of Funded. If you have a loan question or would like to reach out to Mai to get more information about the Impact Department, we will leave her contact information for you below. If you have a loan question, we will also leave a link for you below to click and submit to. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Funded. We will see you on the next one.